Jeff, are we live? Okay, we're live. Great. Hello, everybody out there in cyber world. Welcome to the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau second webinar. This is the second in an ongoing series of dialogue with state and local governments. We're happy to have you out there. I just wanted to let everybody know you could view it at fcc.gov/live if obviously you're already there, but you could pass it on to your colleagues. Questions can be emailed to livequestions@fcc.gov, and we ask that you keep the questions relevant to the agenda, so it's not a free-for-all about every topic under the sun. So we want to keep the discussion to today's agenda so the experts can answer questions. I think I'd like to ask, I know we have some folks on the line from state and local governments. Maybe maybe a few of you could identify yourselves. I don't know, we'll see how that goes. I don't know if everybody's going to be talking over each other, but is there anybody live on the line? No? I think everybody's out there in cyber world. I did hear a few clicks of the phone, so I know some people are on that as well. Okay. So we're going to start today's session with the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau.
This is Dave Bergman from the Office of the Ohio Consumers Council and NASUCA.
Great, Steve. Glad to have you. Anybody else? Glad to have you. Anybody else? I think we have a few others.
This is Dave Salway from the state of New York.
Great.
This is Valerie Ryan from the Connecticut Attorney General's office.
Thanks.
This is Timothy Lowenstein from National Association of Counties and SafeCom.
Hey, Tim.
This is Betty Ann Kane from the District of Columbia Public.
Great.
This is Phil Ferris from the state of Wisconsin.
This is Pam Walker, National Association of State Chief Information Officers.
Great, thanks, Nasio.
Yeah, this is Jim Kohler, state of Alaska.
This is Craig Graziano with the Iowa Office of Consumer Advocate.
Iowa. Okay. All right, I think that's good for now. And as people use some of the dial-up numbers, please identify yourselves and your organization or your state and local government. So kicking off today's webinar is the Wireless Telecommunications Bureau, and we're very lucky to have Matt Nodine, Chief of Staff, and David Goldman, a policy advisor to the Bureau Chief and former advisor to the Chairman. And they're going to be speaking about bill shock and wireless coverage issues, gaps in coverage in rural areas, in urban canyons, and some tribal land initiatives. So I'm going to hand it over to them. And again, any questions that are emailed in, please keep it relevant to the agenda. Thanks. Emmett, do you want to put that up?
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate all you all joining us. My name is Matt Nodine. I'm Chief of Staff and Legal Advisor in the Wireless Bureau. First off, Bill from Wisconsin, I'm impressed you made it on today. I understand you probably had a lot of celebrating to do last night, so good job for the Packers. What we want to do is just cover some of the things, obviously if you heard the number of entities that have joined us today from pretty much all over the United States, we wanted to pick out some topics that we hope are relevant to people across the United States. One of the things that we wanted to present was the fact that this FCC, although the FCC in general, but this FCC in particular, has been very focused on consumer issues, reaching out and trying to identify those issues that affect consumers across the spectrum in the United States. One of the things that we have done are identify some key issues that consumers have brought to our attention and said we're having problems with these things. I guess it'd probably give a 30-second spiel of what the Wireless Bureau is and Wireless Bureau does. Most people would know us as the entity of the FCC that oversees the cell phone industry in the United States. There are some ancillary things we do. We handle licensing, particularly spectrum leases. We also handle amateur radio and some other functions in wireless, but most people would know us as cell phone oriented. One of the things that we did is we heard from consumers that oftentimes they're shocked by the amount of bills, the amount of the number of the bill that they receive from their cell phone providers, whether that is overages in data, overages in minutes. People just consumers didn't know how to track all this. So what we did is we reached out to the industry, carrier industry.
Sorry.
Yep,
There
go
have
ahead.
been a few emails, sorry, Jeff, that say we have no audio on the webcast. Okay, I think we now have audio. If there's anybody listening on the webcast and we don't have audio, please let us know. Let me just interrupt for one more second too and say I think those of you listening in on the webcast, could you just go ahead and email in your attendance for our roll call and let us know what organization, and I'm sorry, Matt.
It's all right.
So again, if there are any technical glitches, no audio, no visual, whatever, let us know. Thanks.
So with respect to Bill Shock, we have reached out to the industry, to the carriers, and are working with them, continuing with them. They've done a lot of outreach already to consumers, especially some of the major carriers, and ways to identify opportunities to talk to their consumers, to talk to their customers, and let them know when they're reaching certain levels of data usage, for instance, or text messages or their cell phone minutes, so that at the end of the month they're not shocked to find out they're 1,000 text messages over or 400 minutes over, or have their data plan has been bumped up to a next level. Some of the things that we're doing is we worked with the industry to alert consumers of some of the things they need to know, for instance, if they travel internationally. One humorous anecdote I like to say is that people don't understand that traveling to Canada or Mexico is traveling internationally. People think, going to the Bahamas or going to France or Spain, but I actually do get phone calls. People say, hey, I've got a $10,000 phone bill because I use data internationally and I didn't go overseas, and come to find out they went to Toronto and didn't realize that crosses a line of international data roaming. So we're working with ways to educate consumers on when you take your smartphone across or outside of the United States, those data plans continue to operate. Those iPhones and the smartphones are continuing to try to download data, continuing to keep emails up to date, and work with ways so that they can limit the amount of data that they have to use. Yeah, please.
Just on the international points, real quickly, for anyone who lives along the border of the United States with Canada or Mexico, another issue your consumers may have, is that even though you've stayed on the United States side of the border, sometimes you're closer to a cell tower that's actually on the other side of the border. So sometimes what will happen to consumers is they'll be very surprised to find out that without leaving the country, they're now getting international charges. So the best thing to do in that situation is, if you do live along the borders, is to contact your cell carrier. They'll have different ways of handling that issue, of making sure that you stay with towers that are on your side of the border, because international charges can sometimes be pretty high. Sorry.
Thanks, David. One of the other things we're working with is to let consumers have data tools at their disposal to measure the broadband speeds that they have. All of this information, by the way, is available on the FCC website. Most of it is under our Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau webpage. So if you go to fcc.gov, look on the right-hand side, right up underneath where it lists the chairman and the commissioner's names, it lists the names of the bureaus, and the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau is the first bureau listed. If you click on that link, it will take you to where a lot of the frequently asked questions and a lot of the information that we provide is publicly available to consumers. And I also encourage you, just in general, if you have cell phones, if you have wireless, data plans, etc., look through and scroll through those fact sheets that we have. We have a lot of helpful information about the rules for using cell phones on airplanes, what to do if you receive spam text messages that are sent to your phones, telemarketers, etc. We won't go into detail on those, but those are the types of things that we're doing to educate consumers on what they need to know for using cell phones. One of the other things is broadband speed, as I was mentioning. We've got some tools. People can log on and they can measure their broadband data, upload and download speeds, so they can see what exactly they're getting as far as service from their providers. And we're continuing to work through things. I asked if we could go ahead and provide some information about something that's coming out, and the answer was yes. Something that's coming out in March, sometime in March. It's going to be a national broadband map collaboration between FCC and NTIA, set to launch next year. It's going to put some broadband maps online covering, I think, some initial states out west, and then hopefully making it larger as the time goes on, to help assist in locating, identifying, and then subsequently closing broadband coverage gaps that are in the United States. Is one of the things we're really looking to work on for consumers. Some of the other things that we're doing to close coverage gaps, David may be able to chime in on some of this. We're looking for ways that are pro-consumer, that we can assist consumers either if they find themselves in what we call the urban canyon. You know, if you're in a major city and you've got tall facilities, tall towers around you, and you may not be able to get the penetration of the signal for smartphones, look for some ways to better serve, whether it's consumers who are walking back and forth to jobs, whether it's your local coffee shop or local eatery, and maybe the service doesn't penetrate as well as we would like for it to. Finding ways to identify that. And we can't go into a lot of the detail yet, but those are things that we're looking to address here in the very near term, and figure out some ways to make that better for consumers. Is there anything you wanted to chime in for that?
Yeah, I mean, just as a couple of examples of possible solutions that carriers can offer for those kind of situations is most carriers offer femtocells now, so it's a little wireless, essentially a wireless tower you can keep in your office or in your house or apartment. They also, you can talk to the carriers and possibly get professionally installed signal boosters that can just amplify the signal that you have already there. So those are a couple of the options that are available to help address some of these problems, and we're working on trying to solve the other issues.
And that's also not just in the urban canyons, but also the rural areas, when you're sort of on that gap or that bridge, that divide between where you're getting great signal, getting great service, and then it starts to fade away. Looking for ways to expand the ability for the carriers to reach the consumers out there. And then one of the last things we wanted to discuss very briefly is that one of the things that the Commission is going to be addressing in its March agenda meeting, some more information is going to be forthcoming on this, are spectrum over tribal lands, ways to increase spectrum coverage in the tribal areas in the United States, which is primarily out in the western areas. But we do have some very interesting things that we've got coming up, and figure out some ways to bring high-speed internet, high-speed broadband, high-speed 3G and 4G services to the tribal areas out there. Before I end, this is pretty much concludes what we wanted to offer, wanted to make sure you had my email address. If there's anything that we've discussed today that piques your curiosity or that you want to get some additional information on, don't worry about sending the question in if it's something similar to this. Catch up with me offline. My email address is Matthew, MATTHEW, .Nodine, NODINE, @FCC.gov. So if you want to reach out, feel free to do that. Actually, I did forget one thing that the Commission did approximately a year ago that is actually helping bring towers to the consumers to increase signal coverage much more quickly. It was our CTI, what we call shot clock ruling. Basically what we did is we set a time limit of 90 days for co-locations and 150 days for new locations for local municipalities to make determinations and make decisions on the siting and placement of cell towers. Again, looking for ways to speed up the ability of consumers to get broadband coverage. So, Dave and I appreciate your time. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to let us know.
Go ahead and email them into live questions. And I should let our speakers know, so we're sitting here staring at cameras in an empty room, that I've received from the roll call well over 100 people in attendance. So you're being heard out there. And if anybody has anything for the Wireless Bureau, now would be the time to send an email. Let's give them a second. Oh, we got a question or two. All right, let's see. What type of charges on bills has the FCC identified as a significant consumer issue? I think this is probably one more for the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, right, guys?
It is, but we do work very closely with the carrier, so I can address that very quickly. It's voice minutes, data usage, and numbers of text messages. Those seem to be the top three that consumers have let us know. These are ones we didn't realize we were getting close to whatever it is that our limit is, and it would be great to find out in advance and not get hit with a couple $100 cell phone bill when we were expecting it to be around $90 to $100.
In that question, I should mention, comes from the Attorney General's office in Tallahassee, Florida. So let's see, we have a few more to the extent. What type, more along the same lines. I think that's it for now. Let me tell everybody out there in the cyber world, to the extent we get your questions and the speakers have left and gone on, we will direct the questions that we receive to the proper bureau, and they'll see that somebody gets it and gets back to you. Okay?
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great. Next up is the Wireline Competition Bureau. And guys, we have a lot of people out there in the cyber world, and I see my email is full. I saw. Okay, give us a second. Our speakers are getting ready. So we have the Wireline Competition Bureau. We have James Bachtel, a senior attorney, will be giving us an update, an E-rate update, and E-rate is certainly something that's very relevant to the states. And Dina Shetler will be talking about the Broadband Acceleration Conference that we're going to be having here on February 9th, dealing with rights of way, pole attachment, and tower sightings. I'm sure there's some folks on the line. I know I've gotten some emails from the folks from the TOA and some other organizations, so I think Dina may have a few questions. So without further ado, I hand it over to James and Dina.
Great. Thank you very much. Yes, I'll be talking about the E-rate program a little bit today. Most of my presentation will focus on the 6th report and order, which recently came out and did quite a bit to kind of bring the E-rate program up to date in light of the advancements that we have with internet and broadband technologies. Let's see, I'll start by going through and just introducing a little bit in broad terms about what the Universal Service Fund is. And really, it's access to telecommunication services to all regions of the U.S. at reasonable rates. And there's 4 components that we deal with in talking about universal service. And those are the low income component, which helps with folks who live in rural or high cost area. I'm sorry, the low income consumer program, that's the one I was referring to. But the largest program is the high cost program, and that helps keep rates reasonable for those who live in rural or high cost areas. The low income consumers, we have the rural health care program, and then lastly the program that helps public and private schools and libraries. Of course, that's the E-rate program, and that's what I'll be talking about today. The size of the fund in 2009 was approximately $7.2 billion, so it's a really large fund. Again, high cost is the largest of the components. In 2010, we anticipated that the disbursements would be about $8.7 billion. Contributions to the fund come from every telecommunications provider that provides interstate and international telecommunications services. That's based on a formula. Basically, this is passed on to consumers on their phone bills. So anyone that uses a landline or wireless telephone, I'm sure have seen the universal service charges on there, and that's what helps pay for universal service. I'll give a little bit of background specific to the E-rate program. The E-rate program is eligible to schools and libraries that apply for discounts on telecommunication services, internet access, internal connections, and what we mean by internal connections are the wires that take the internet or telecommunications into the classroom or into the library work area. And lastly, basic maintenance of internal connections, which helps maintain those wires and routers and other things that are E-rate eligible. The program is capped at $2.25 billion per year. However, that has just been adjusted for inflation per the 6th report and order. So for 2010, it's actually bumped up a little bit to $2.27 billion. Discounts in the program range from 20 to 90% on eligible services. So the neediest schools and libraries would receive 90% off on their telecommunications or internet access or internal connections, whatever the case may be. Discounts for telecommunications and internet access, we consider those to be priority 1 funded, since we fund those first. And then we fund internet connections and basic maintenance. The funds are depleted every year, so we never fund all the priority 2 projects, but typically priority 1 projects are all funded. Schools and libraries must seek competitive bids for services, and the program is actually administered by the Universal Service Administrative Company, so they do all the kind of day-to-day work on the program. Now I'll talk a little bit about the 6th report and order. This was released last September, and it provides more flexibility to select broadband services. It streamlines and simplifies the E-rate program and improves safeguards against waste, fraud, and abuse. The order stems from a May 20th, 2010 notice of proposed rulemaking that sought comment on the National Broadband Plan's proposals. So in the 6th report in order to provide more flexibility to select broadband services, we now allow schools and libraries to lease dark fiber. Schools and libraries can now lease fiber connectivity from any entity, and this includes state, municipal, or regional research networks and utility companies. It also allows community access to schools' E-rate supported services on schools' campuses. It also supports broadband connectivity to residential schools that serves populations with unique challenges. So now those folks in their actual dorm rooms can receive internet and broadband access to help them with their educational challenges. As I mentioned earlier, we've indexed the E-rate cap to inflation. And right now we are seeking applications for a limited trial to support off-campus wireless internet connectivity for portable learning devices. This is the EDU 2011 program, and I'll talk in a little bit more detail about that later. Some of the other things we did in the 6th report and order was to streamline and simplify the E-rate program. One of the things we did was eliminate technology plan requirements for applicants that were seeking the most basic telecommunications and internet services. Basically all of P1 services now are exempt from that requirement. We've also authorized schools and libraries to dispose of obsolete equipment after 5 years for payment or other valuable consideration. And we're taking other steps that do not require rulemaking, such as streamlining the application process and some internal USAC review procedures. And finally, we've just codified the requirement that was developed through FCC precedent that the competitive bidding process be a fair and open process. So I'll talk quickly about EDU 2011. This is part of the 6th report and order. The Commission launched this pilot program, and applications were due December 20th, 2010. And what we've done is set aside about $10 million in E-rate funding for funding year 2011, and this will be used to support some innovative or interactive off-premise wireless connectivity projects for schools and libraries. It will investigate the merits and challenges of wireless off-premise connectivity, and these funds will be used for connectivity, not for the actual portable devices or equipment. So this basically would be telecommunications and internet services that would already be supported by the E-rate program. We would just broaden a little bit kind of the educational purposes that these could be used for. As far as next steps, we are now looking at putting together another NPRM to further implement some of the other proposals from the National Broadband Plan. And in the future, we'd like to implement a permanent support for wireless off-campus devices. So those are some of the things that we have coming up. I'll give you some resources on this page. If you're interested in reading the 6th report and order, and we have some other guidance related to that to help you walk through it a little bit, you can go to the FCC School and Libraries homepage, which is the second link on this page, and there you'll find a lot of information about the 6th report and order and other things going on related to E-rate. So that is the E-rate update.
And before Dina steps up, if anybody wants to email in questions, now would be the time. I think now we must have 150 people out there in Cyberland, so rest assured your message is being heard. And if I haven't gotten to everybody who's emailed in their roll call, please know that your message has gotten to us and we know you're out there. Okay, great. Go ahead, Dina.
Okay. Hi, I just came by this morning to talk about the Broadband Acceleration Conference, which is going to be going on this Wednesday starting at 11 a.m. and going through approximately 3:30 p.m. And what we are looking to do at this event is really highlight, well, first of all, focus on rights-of-way, tower siting, and pole attachment issues, and this is sort of a infrastructure build-out challenges issue. Focus first on best practices. We're doing a panel to really look at both sides of rights-of-way issues where it has gone well, both on rights-of-way from the local government side and from the industry side, and on pole attachments both from the pole owner side and an attacher side. And on tower siting, we're looking both from we're having a representative of a county government talk and also a tower company talk about examples of where things really went well and talk about their ideas regarding why that went well. So we're starting out with a best practices panel. We'll be next going to and sort of previewing what we have. We have not yet released the agenda for the day, but we expect to shortly. The second panel is really going to focus on innovations. It's going to be looking at things like intelligent transportation systems and how you can use synergies from getting the intelligent transportation systems built along highways and also use them to provide middle mile backhaul in some areas, looking at smart grid where broadband that's built out has been built out in connection with smart grid. It can also be used to facilitate broadband access in the home, and we'll be looking at some wireless innovation in terms of hybrid wireless fiber backhaul. We'll also be doing, after that, we're going to be doing a roundtable that really focuses on policy solutions and bringing back our local government representatives and industry representatives to talk about what's working. And really what we want to get coming out of this day is we recognize that this is a multi-jurisdictional problem. We want to facilitate everyone working together. We want to we want to get input from both sides of the debate and figure out exactly where we can best facilitate reducing the cost of broadband rollout. And that's really the point of the day, is to come up with some concrete suggestions of steps we can take, not necessarily what rules the FCC can make, but role we can play in facilitating overcoming the challenges that we all know are out there. So that's sort of a heads up on the day, and I'm happy to take any questions. Sorry. It's okay.
Hi, go, Dina, you were saying?
I was just saying I just gave kind of a quick heads up on what's going to be going on that day, and we're happy to take any questions, although I can't.
And that's, the event's open to the public?
The event is open to the public, yes, and it's also going to be web streamed, and it starts at 11 a.m. here and should go to about 3:30.
And I imagine that'll be the same, the FCC, same streaming address, fcc.gov/live. So for those of you all over the country who can't attend, we certainly invite you to attend. And I think, judging by seeing my computer light up, I think attendance will be pretty good. And I think we also have about 50 phone lines right now for state and local governments, and I think those are all full too, because I had an email saying folks couldn't get in. So if anybody has any questions on James's presentation or Dina's, please feel free to email. And if we don't get to it right now, we'll be sure that the Wireline Bureau does get your email. Okay. Anybody? Oh, I hear somebody on the phone. I think that's it then. Okay. And thank you very much. It's great. I've gotten some comments saying this is great. Thanks for the outreach, and I think it's really a good way in times of limited. We have all the states and local governments really have limited budget, and it's not everybody's going to travel from across the country to hear from us. So this is it's really a good thing. So thank you. Great. Oh, that's it. We're having. Great.
Grab a mic.
Grab a mic, and I will. Okay. Next. Next up, we have David Firth from the Public Safety Homeland Security Bureau. David is Deputy Chief. David brings years of knowledge. He comes to Public Safety Homeland Security Bureau from the Wireless Bureau, and he's going to talk about interoperable public safety broadband network, the nationwide deployment, narrowbanding, improving emergency alerts, and next generation E911, and I think emergency planning. So that's an awful lot, and we were very lucky to have David. David, did you have a presentation?
I don't have slides. I was just going to try to go very quickly over all of these topics. I'd like to welcome everyone out there in cyberspace who is participating in this webinar, and thank CGB for giving us the opportunity to speak. I'm David Firth. I'm Deputy Chief of the Public Safety Homeland Security Bureau at the FCC. Our Bureau is responsible for a variety of issues relating to public safety and emergency communications. First responder communication systems, whether narrowband or broadband. Also 911 systems and 911 requirements. Emergency alerting. And then also certain aspects having to do with communications and emergency response, for example, in response to major disasters such as hurricanes and other types of major events. We work very closely with state governments and local governments and tribal governments and organizations. I encourage you to go to our website, the Public Safety and Homeland Security Bureau webpage on the FCC website for further information. And I would also point out that we have an office within the Bureau that is specifically focused on communications and outreach to the public safety community, including many, if not all, of the organizations that are participating in this webinar. So I don't know whether there'll be time in my 15 minutes for questions, but to the extent that what I talk about raises questions, we are happy to respond to them either during the webinar or afterwards. Let me talk a little bit, first of all, about the nationwide interoperable public safety broadband network. The Commission's been very focused on this for a number of years because events such as 9/11 and Hurricane Katrina have revealed to all of us the importance of interoperability and the cost that comes with the lack of interoperability in public safety communications. We have taken many strides to try to address this problem in the last decade, but we are certainly not done with addressing it. There's much still to do. But in the broadband world, we have an opportunity. And this is because there is a block of spectrum in the 700 megahertz band that was cleared as a result of the digital television transition, which has been dedicated, allocated to public safety for broadband use. And under the Commission's National Broadband Plan that was released last year, we recommended a framework for the deployment of public safety interoperable broadband facilities that would cover the nation and would provide full nationwide interoperable capability with the most modern broadband technology to first responders across the country. This is a very ambitious undertaking, but it's really one of the most important breakthroughs in public safety communications to come along in decades. We have recommended a framework, but in addition to that, the Commission's taken several actions over the course of the last year to actually start the process of deployment under what we call a network of networks architecture. This is an architecture where we anticipate that much of the actual building deployment of this network will be done at the state and local and regional level. And our job is to ensure that what all of these individual jurisdictions build conforms to a common template, a common technical template, so that all of these systems operate under a common technical standard and are compatible and interoperable with one another, which means, among other things, that different jurisdictions can then share in the use of the network, can roam into one another's jurisdictions when there is an emergency that calls for that, and their equipment will work on this network. Last May, the Commission adopted a waiver order that granted waivers to 21 state and local jurisdictions to begin early deployment of broadband facilities in the 700 megahertz band. We established certain technical conditions that they all must comply with. The Commission also at that point stood up the Emergency Response Interoperability Center, which is known as ERIC, within the Bureau to coordinate policy and technical rules, to recommend the adoption of technical rules by the Commission that would ensure interoperability. The Commission also 2 weeks ago at its January meeting took an additional step to further the network architecture by adopting an order that established the long-term evolution, or LTE, technical standard as the standard that will be used for all deployments in this band. This is an unusual step for the Commission to take. We do not normally adopt or mandate technical standards, but because of the overriding importance of this band and of ensuring public safety interoperability, the Commission took the step of mandating that deployment in this band be pursuant to the LTE standard. This is a standard that's already widely being adopted by the commercial users in other portions of the 700 megahertz band and has broad support from the public safety community, and really sets a technical path that will allow for the goal of nationwide interoperability to be realized. And we've also, in the same order that the Commission adopted, the Commission also included a notice of proposed rulemaking, which seeks comment on a variety of other technical issues that we need to decide in order to cement and really put into the DNA of this network the technical requirements that ensure functionality and interoperability. We do not yet have a comment cycle established for that notice of proposed rulemaking. That will depend on when it is published in the Federal Register, which should occur probably within the next few weeks. And when that happens, we will issue a public notice that will alert everyone to what the comment deadlines are. And we very much encourage all of the organizations and participants on this call to look closely at that notice and the questions that we've asked and provide us with comments, because this will be very helpful for the Commission to make a decision on these issues later this year. Let me shift gears a little bit then and talk about narrowbanding, which is another issue that I know is of significant concern to many state and local jurisdictions. Narrowbanding deals with the narrowband portions of the public safety spectrum where traditional land mobile radio voice systems operate, particularly in the VHF band and the UHF band. And what narrowbanding does is it is a commission mandate that was actually established a number of years ago to require more efficient use of the channels in order to free up additional capacity and allow more systems to interoperate with one another in these bands. The narrowbanding requirement requires all public safety radio systems and other systems in the UHF and VHF bands to narrow the bandwidth of each individual voice channel from 25 kilohertz to 12.5 kilohertz. And by doing so, this then enables the spectrum to be used more efficiently. This is a process that the Commission actually started about 20 years ago in these bands because they already were encountering congestion. And in 2004, the Commission established January 1st, 2013 as the deadline for all LMR systems in the UHF and VHF bands to migrate from 25 kilohertz to 12.5 kilohertz technology. That January 1st, 2013 deadline is now less than 2 years away, and so we're now very focused on working with the public safety community and with state and local authorities to ensure that we get everybody to that finish line, those that have not already narrowbanded. There are, in fact, many systems that have already met the narrowbanding requirement. Equipment to meet the requirement has been widely available for over 10 years, and so most equipment that's now available in the marketplace is narrowband capable, and many systems already have that equipment in place and can make the conversion relatively easily. But we've also determined from looking at our licensing database that there are still many jurisdictions that have not narrowbanded, and the concern is that some of them may still need to engage in substantial upgrades of their equipment in order to meet the requirement. So we have started a process of communicating more information to relevant licensees about the narrowbanding requirement. About 2 months ago, we launched a web page. It's www.fcc.gov/narrowbanding, which is a web page that's specifically devoted to providing information about the mandate, answers frequently asked questions, provides contact information both within the Bureau and to other agencies, federal agencies that may provide technical assistance and that in some instances may provide funding assistance to help licensees meet the mandate. So this is an extremely important undertaking that we all need to work together to achieve. We've also had contact from many jurisdictions about technical questions about how to implement the narrowbanding requirements, and we've also heard concerns expressed by some that they may have difficulty meeting that January 1st, 2013 deadline. And what we have encouraged those jurisdictions to do is to come and to talk to the Bureau and to help us get a better understanding of the facts and circumstances that you're facing, so that we can determine the best course and help you to get resources to meet the requirement. A number of jurisdictions have asked about whether it's possible to obtain waivers of the deadline. That is a determination that the Commission has to make based on the specific facts and circumstances of each case. But what I would underscore is that waivers are not routinely granted, and therefore that any jurisdiction that is considering that option should contact us sooner rather than later, and also go through the necessary planning and due diligence to determine what the nature of their existing system is and what exactly is going to be required in order to help them meet the mandate. Those are really important first steps that need to be taken by anybody that doesn't have a plan in place to meet the narrowbanding requirement. Let me then talk very quickly about a couple of other issues, and as I said, there's a lot more information about all of these issues on our website. Emergency alerting is another critical area that the Bureau is involved in. Many of you, of course, are familiar with the emergency alert system, which is the broadcast-based system that is used by many states and many localities to issue emergency alerts, such as weather alerts. This is also a system, though, that was originally designed to enable the president to issue national alerts in the event of an emergency, a nationwide emergency. Fortunately, it's never been used for that purpose, and we hope it never will be, but nonetheless, it's important that we be prepared for the eventuality that it could be used at a national level. And to that end, the Commission just last week adopted an order that revises our rules to facilitate a future nationwide test of the emergency alerting system. This is, in fact, something that's never happened. There have been many tests, and in fact, there are recurring tests of the emergency alerting system at the state level. But it has never been tested at the national level, and so we are now engaged in a process to prepare for a national test, and the order that the Commission adopted last week revises our rules to support that national test and also to provide for data collection from all of the broadcasters and cable systems and others that participate in the alert system. The Commission also later this year is going to be releasing a notice of inquiry on so-called next generation alerting, which will be seeking to develop alerting capabilities on broadband platforms as well as on traditional broadcast platforms. Also underway is the development of what we call the Commercial Mobile Alert System, which is, or CMAS, which is alert capability that would be provided over cell phones and other wireless devices. That is a program that was initiated by congressional action and that the Commission, in coordination with other agencies, is in the process of developing. So CMAS does not exist at this point, but both on the government side and on the carrier side, there is work going on right now to make CMAS a reality in the next couple of years. Let me talk finally about 911 and next generation 911. Obviously, the 911 system is one of the cornerstones of our emergency response system. This is critical in order for the public to be able to alert authorities to emergencies and to obtain emergency response. The Bureau's responsibility is, first of all, to ensure that our wireline and wireless licensees support the existing telephone-based 911 system, which is one of the best in the world, is very robust, and which we have made great strides in improving over the course of the last few years. And just as an example, the Commission in September adopted rules to further improve the location accuracy of 911 systems, particularly of wireless 911 systems, so that when a caller places a 911 call over a cell phone, that caller has a greater likelihood of being located so that response can be directed to them, and located with sufficient precision so that in fact that response will be made much faster. We're also, though, working on the development of so-called next-generation 911 systems. And again, next-generation 911 is taking the kind of legacy 911 concept and importing it to broadband technologies and broadband platforms, so that in the future, in addition to being able to place a 911 call over a traditional telephone, the public would be able to use a variety of means on broadband networks and using a variety of devices to not only reach 911 centers, but potentially to reach them by means not only of voice but by text, and to send information such as photos or videos that could provide first responders with much more information about the nature of the emergency, so that they can then tailor their response. Next generation 911 is still in its very early stages, but some states and some localities are already upgrading their existing 911 systems with IP-based technology that will ultimately support many of these new applications. In the National Broadband Plan, the Commission made several recommendations to encourage the further development of next generation 911, and among those recommendations was that the Commission itself engage in rulemaking activity to develop a next generation 911 regulatory regime. In September, the Commission issued a notice dealing with location accuracy in the provision of next generation voice services such as voice over IP. The comments in that proceeding have now come in. In fact, I think the reply comments will be coming in the next couple of weeks, and then we expect to be taking up that issue before the Commission later this year. And then in December, the Commission adopted a very broad notice of inquiry, which seeks comment generally on next generation 911 services, including text messaging, videos, photos, and how to develop standards and potentially rules that would provide for these capabilities to be made available to the public on broadband platforms, and that would enable 911 centers to link up to these capabilities. That proceeding has comments due later this month and reply comments due in March, and again, we would welcome your input on that. And one other issue I would mention in the 911 context is the issue of 911 fees that many states and some localities charge to telephone consumers to support the provision of their 911 systems. And under the Net 911 Improvement Act several years ago, Congress required the Commission on an annual basis to collect information and to report on the state collection and distribution of 911 fees and charges, including identifying which states are using 911 fees for 911 purposes and which are diverting those fees for other purposes. And the Commission has issued 2 such reports to Congress, the first in the summer of 2009, the second last summer. And we're now beginning the information collection process for our 3rd annual report, which will be submitted this coming summer. So with that, I think I may have run over my time a little bit, and I apologize, but there's a lot to cover, obviously. I'm happy to stay around if the format allows to take questions.
No, and that would be great. Thank you, David. Thank you so much. Maybe I'll just ask you to hang out there for a few minutes. And I apologize. I did get a few emails about people putting the mic a little closer, but I think I think David did great. He's done enough of these. And maybe before David leaves, we'll have him sit up there for a minute or so to see if anybody has any questions they want to formulate and email in. How's that? Okay. I just can't believe how many folks we have out there online. So you have to understand from our end here, we're in a room and it's just a few of us. So this is great, and we hope we're doing a good job, and we look forward to bringing you a few more of these. Anything for David? Anything? Anybody who's on the telephone lines? No, I just hear some rumbling. All right, are you going to hang out a little bit? Okay. All right. Well, with that, let's maybe go to our next speaker from the Media Bureau. Okay. Next up, we have Rebecca Hansen. She's a senior attorney in the Media Bureau, and she's going to be speaking about the incentive auctions and broadcast spectrum. So I think, given all the discussion about spectrum, this is spectrum scarcity, et cetera, I think this is really a hot topic, and we're very lucky to have her.
Thank you very much. And I guess if we can get the PowerPoint loaded, and where will I see that? Okay. No.
This is yours?
That's not mine. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Well, all right, well, in the meantime, maybe some folks will have some more questions for David. Oh, that looks like it. Great. You just may want to maximize that, Emmett. Excellent. Okay, I think we're set.
Yeah, I just need my
Your clicker.
Which one?
Thanks everybody for bearing with us. Just push next.
Okay. All right, well, thank you, and I'm here to speak about the incentive auction proposal that the wireless and media bureaus have been proposing and working on in Congress. By way of overview, okay, there we go. By way of overview, what I want to cover in the short time that I have is our view on the key driver that spectrum is to the economy, as well as deficit reduction. Also going to speak briefly about the spectrum crunch that we're facing in light of increasing demand over time. I'm going to give an overview of the different spectrum bands we're looking at and the different actions that we're taking to address the growing need for broadcast spectrum. And then finally, I want to focus on incentive auctions as a key new policy tool that we're going to need to get more spectrum on the market and focus specifically on TV broadcast spectrum. So with respect to the economy and deficit reduction, spectrum is really a natural resource, and it's often difficult for people to appreciate it because you can't see it, you can't feel it. Actually, people tend to take it for granted, but it's an essential input to the provision of all of our wireless services, from netbooks to laptops to cell phones. We're using spectrum all the time. And as new uses arise, such as mobile broadband, we need to continually find new sources of spectrum to feed those new uses. And what we're facing now is a situation where all the spectrum is actually spoken for particular uses, and the endeavor we're on now is to shift the spectrum that is allocated to specific historic uses to new uses, particularly flexible wireless broadband uses. And wireless, in addition to how it benefits our lives as consumers and producers of economic activity every day, it itself is also an economic engine. And with the consistent growth that we've seen, that I'll go into more detail in a minute on, with respect to subscribers and revenue and jobs, we think that spectrum should be as much of a part as our economic policy as it should be with respect to our telecommunications policy. So to give an overview of the wireless industry and what it contributes to the economy, essentially from 1992 to 2007, the wireless industry has contributed 16% to U.S. GDP annually, as opposed to 3% growth in the rest of the economy. Since 2000, the wireless industry has increased jobs by 12%, which compares to only 1% for the overall U.S. economy. Every year, capital investment of about $20 billion is invested by the wireless industry into the wireless industry. The phenomenon of wireless apps have generated $6 billion globally in 2010 alone. I think that covers 1.6 billion downloads of apps. And there are, in addition, significant indirect economic benefits to the wireless economy, such as education, healthcare, energy, and civic engagement. And I would recommend everyone on this webinar to take a look at the National Broadband Plan if you haven't looked at that yet. It's on the website fcc.gov, and that goes into great detail with respect to these national purposes of how wireless broadband and broadband in general can improve those sectors of the economy. And last but not least, in addition to all the other benefits that spectrum contributes to the overall economy, the fact is that there is also a Treasury benefit, a direct benefit to the Treasury from the FCC's spectrum auctions. Since 1993, the FCC spectrum licenses have contributed over $50 billion to the Treasury, and $30 billion of that has been contributed in the past 5 years. So that shows that demand for spectrum is still strong, and we believe it will continue to grow. And why demand for spectrum will continue to grow is based on what we're calling a spectrum crunch. As I mentioned before, we are in a position where, looking forward over the next couple of years, we are concerned that we're going to run out of unoccupied spectrum that's best suited for wireless broadband. And our concern is if we don't take action now, then the lack of spectrum that we'll be facing in a couple of years will result in poor service for consumers, meaning dropped calls or slow connection, slow texting or web connections. In addition, it could likely result in rationing and higher prices for consumers. But also, our biggest concern is the lost economic opportunities that come from the innovation that we believe spectrum provides. Since 2000, there have been more and more users of mobile broadband. If you look at this slide, which shows of wireless connections, 300 million wireless connections, with respect to at least cell phone handsets, we're probably approaching 100% penetration in the country. This phenomenon is now moving into over 100% penetration of wireless devices, meaning people have more than one wireless device. So that's continuing to grow. And they're using those wireless devices more and more per user. This chart shows that if you look at feature phones, the most basic cell phones, they consume tens of megabytes per month. Smartphones, which are increasingly becoming more common in the ecosystem, consume hundreds of megabits per month. And now PC cards and Air cards are consuming actually gigabytes per month. And we don't see that trend letting up at all in the near future. In fact, we see it projecting outwards continually on an upward trajectory. And this is what that trajectory looks like. By 2014, all the consensus of industry analysts and forecasts show about a 35x growth in mobile data traffic by 2014. And if you look at this chart, which shows our spectrum supply, you'll see that when you get into the 2013-2014 timeframe, that's where we're going to have a deficit of available spectrum to meet the growing traffic. So as a result of that, we're taking a number of actions to try to head off that crunch that we see coming in the 2014-2015 timeframe. This slide shows a list of the bands on the left-hand side where we believe there is a reallocation opportunity from its current use, which is shown on the right, to future flexible mobile and wireless broadband use. As you can see, there are a number of opportunities that we're pursuing. Most notably, we think there's a 25 megahertz opportunity, reallocation opportunity in the WCS band. We've done a lot of work recently, including NPRM's opening up the MSS band for terrestrial wireless broadband. The Advanced Wireless Services Band, we think there's an opportunity there. We're working with NTIA to open that opportunity. Similarly, we're working with NTIA with respect to federal spectrum. But what I want to address for the rest of this presentation is the opportunity that we see in broadcast television. And with respect to that, we're currently launching a number of groundwork proceedings. Most notably, on November 30th, we issued the first NPRM with respect to television broadcast spectrum and how we can take steps to allocate that to mobile broadband use. But to step back, I'd like to spend a minute on explaining what incentive auctions are as we have proposed them in the National Broadband Plan. As I've mentioned before, the most attractive spectrum for wireless broadband is currently occupied today. And we believe that some of those allocations may not be used to their fullest efficiency potential. So the concept of an incentive auction is that incumbents in the targeted band would be able to share, they would contribute their spectrum to an auction that we would run, and then we would share the proceeds from that auction with the contributing licensees. We believe that this is important to motivate the licensees who are currently using that spectrum to contribute it to this effort. Our concern is that if we don't offer this incentive, then there's no reason for those licensees of spectrum to come forward and contribute it. And as a result, there would be no spectrum to auction, and as a result, there would be no auction proceeds, no contribution to the Treasury, no overall economic benefit, not only to the wireless infrastructure in this country, but to the cause of innovation and job creation. Currently, the FCC is entitled to run spectrum auctions and license spectrum, but our authority does not extend to the sharing of auction proceeds with spectrum contributors. So we are in the process of working with Congress on how to grant that authority to the FCC. There have been a lot of questions in the industry on how the incentive auctions would apply to the television bans. And the television bans have received a lot of attention with respect to our incentive auction program. And that's because the TV bans have excellent propagation characteristics for wireless broadband. Because we're going through this effort to take a comprehensive look at the spectrum bands, we want to make sure that whatever spectrum we put forth to make available for wireless broadband is as efficient as possible. And that does happen to be the television bands. The nature of that spectrum is that it can travel long distances, it has excellent in-building penetration capabilities, and lots of wide throughput, all of which are very valuable for wireless broadband, especially when you look at the heavy video data transmissions that we anticipate are on the horizon. In addition, the television bands are adjacent to the 700 band, which we auctioned recently and which wireless carriers are now rolling out for 4G LTE networks. So that adjacency contributes to the efficiency of looking at opportunities in the TV bands for extending the wireless broadband band. We also believe that given the situation of certain broadcasters in the industry, there may be an opportunity to strengthen the television sector with the cash infusion, which is the revenue share of the spectrum proceeds that we would share with contributing broadcasters. And finally, we believe as we look at the evolution of audio and video entertainment, broadcast, broadband, we believe that now the television industry is poised for new approaches to station operations that are more spectrally efficient. And we achieve all of these goals in some of the options that we have created for television broadcasters to contribute spectrum to this auction. And at a high level, there are three ways that a broadcaster could participate in a voluntary spectrum auction. The first is the simplest, a broadcaster who feels they're in a position to contribute all of their 6 megahertz channels. If they have one station, they could contribute all 6 megahertz attributable to that station. If they own multiple broadcast stations, they could contribute a handful of that station group to the auction, and in exchange, they would receive a share of the auction proceeds. The second option would be for a smaller share of auction proceeds. A broadcaster could exchange a part of their spectrum. For this example, we can say half their spectrum, and then share a 6 megahertz channel with another broadcaster. So you'd have two broadcasters broadcasting their programming on one 6 megahertz channel. In this option, the broadcaster is staying on the air. The broadcaster has the ability to focus on that one primary channel from which he or she gains most of his or her revenue. And we'll be able to strengthen that broadcaster's operations with the cash infusion that comes from the proceeds share in the auction. A third option that we have come up with would be a proceeds share in exchange for a broadcaster moving from the UHF to the VHF. This opportunity may be attractive for a broadcaster who, say, gets 85-90% of his revenue from carriage on cable or satellite networks, either through must-carry or even retrans. By moving from the UHF to the VHF, that broadcaster would continue to enjoy that revenue stream through must-carry or retrans, but would be in a part of the band that we believe is less attractive to wireless broadband providers, thereby freeing up that UHF channel for us to auction, receiving a portion of the proceeds from that auction, but staying on the air with its complete 6 megahertz channel. The only difference being is that 6 megahertz would now be in the VHF and not the UHF. And of course, for many broadcasters out there, the fourth option may well be most attractive, which is they would choose not to participate at all and continue broadcasting as they do today. The important point on this slide is that all of these options are voluntary. You may have heard differently. That message seems to get lost, but I assure you that in our proposal, all of these options are voluntary for broadcasters to contribute their spectrum. And for all these reasons that I've gone through, we believe, we sincerely believe that what we've come up with will benefit all stakeholders. We believe that through incentive auction, the U.S. economy wins. We think it's an opportunity with more spectrum in the marketplace to maintain our global leadership in wireless innovation, job creation, and economic growth. We believe that U.S. consumers will win with more spectrum in the marketplace because we can continue with advancements in wireless products and services. We believe U.S. taxpayers win because this auction, we believe, will generate multiple billions of dollars in cash to the Treasury and contribute to much-needed deficit reduction. And finally, we believe that contributing licensees will win due to the capital infusion that they'll receive to support their new business models. I realize that's a lot to cover in these few short minutes, but if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Rebecca, thank you very much. That was an excellent presentation. Why don't we give everybody a minute to catch their breath and see if any questions come in, because that was certainly a lot to take in. Let's pause for a minute here while we get ready for our next speaker from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau. So we'll take a minute. I think I've also had some questions about whether the webinar will be archived, and I believe it will be archived at the reboot site of the fcc.gov. I think our last webinar might even still be up there, and the PowerPoints will be put up with it as well, so you'll be able to get to it. It might take a little digging, but I think it'll be on the reboot site of the FCC website. I'm trying to get confirmation on that right now from our social media team. Rebecca, do you want to hang out for a minute, and we'll bring up our next speaker, and that way if you have some questions, maybe you could we could get them to you and you could answer it. Esther Lint, is that okay? Thank you so much. We really appreciate your participation in the media bureaus. It was really super. Okay, great. Our next speaker is my colleague from the Consumer and Governmental Affairs Bureau, Lynn Rattenavale, a senior attorney in the Consumer Policy Division, and she's here to talk about the Commission's recent open internet order. So this has made all the news, so I think this will be a great presentation. Okay, we have a lot of folks out there, Lynn.
For my clicker here to.
Yeah. And Emmett, you may want to maximize. If you, thanks.
And you'll have to bear with me. I have a little bit of a cold, so hopefully my voice will hold.
Yeah, and I should just say, unlike myself, pull the mic close to your.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, by way of introduction and overview. One of the most important features of the internet is its openness, and it uses free, publicly available standards that anyone can access and build to, and it treats all traffic that flows across the network in roughly the same way. That design has made it possible for anyone, anywhere, to easily launch innovative applications and services, which have revolutionized the way people communicate. After holding a series of open workshops and reviewing the extensive record of public comments, On December 21st, the Commission adopted the Open Internet Report and Order. That report and order adopted 3 high-level rules to preserve the free and open Internet. Those rules are as follows. The first rule, which you can see up on the screen, is the transparency requirement. This requires all broadband providers to disclose information regarding their network management practices, performance, and commercial terms of their broadband services so that their subscribers can make informed choices regarding those services, and so that edge providers can continue to develop content applications and services. The second rule provides that fixed broadband providers, such as DSL, cable modem, or fixed wireless providers, may not block lawful content, applications, services, or harmful devices. The third rule establishes that fixed broadband providers may not unreasonably discriminate in transmitting lawful network traffic over a consumer's broadband internet access service. The no blocking and no unreasonable discrimination rules are subject to what's called reasonable network management. This term means that broadband providers must be able to reasonably manage their networks. Under the new Open Internet rules, a broadband provider's network management practice is reasonable if it is appropriate and tailored to achieving a legitimate network management purpose, taking into account the particular network architecture and technology of the broadband internet access service. A legitimate network management purpose might include ensuring network security, addressing traffic that is unwanted by users, and reducing or mitigating the effects of congestion on the network. In contrast, a practice intended to harm a competitor or block speech with which the broadband provider disagreed would not be reasonable. In the notice of proposed rulemaking in this proceeding, the Commission recognized that broadband providers offer services that share capacity with broadband internet access service over providers' last mile facilities and may develop and offer other such services in the future. These are called specialized services and may include voice over internet and IP video offerings. While specialized services may drive investment in broadband networks and provide consumers with valued services, they may also raise concerns about bypassing the Open Internet rules and enabling anti-competitive conduct. In the Open Internet Report and Order, the Commission stated that it will closely monitor market developments to verify that specialized services promote investment, innovation, competition, and consumer benefits without undermining or threatening the open internet. Consumer choice, freedom of expression, user control, competition, and the ability to innovate without permission are just as important when users are accessing the internet via mobile broadband as it is fixed. However, mobile broadband is at an earlier stage than fixed broadband and is rapidly developing. Therefore, the FCC has determined that it use a more measured approach when placing open internet rules on mobile. Therefore, in the Open Internet Report and Order, the Commission required mobile broadband providers to comply with the same transparency rule applicable to fixed. Mobile broadband providers also may not block consumers from accessing lawful websites and may not block applications that compete with providers' voice or video telephony services, subject to the same reasonable network management requirement. The Open Internet Report and Order also makes clear that nothing in the rules supersedes any obligation a broadband internet access provider may have or limits its ability to deliver emergency communications or address the needs of law enforcement, public safety, or national security authorities consistent with the applicable law. In addition, nothing in the rules prohibits reasonable efforts by a broadband provider to address copyright infringement or other unlawful activity. I can take any questions.
Abby Swinton from the National Governors Association has a question, and Abby asks, she believes the Open Internet Order also creates an Open Internet Advisory Committee. Can you speak about the composition of the advisory committee, including whether there will be any state representation, to the extent we know or have direction
Yes.
from the chairman's office?
Federal Advisory Committee rules require that essentially all communities affected are represented. At this point, the formation of that advisory committee is still in its very early phase. There's requirements to file a charter and all sort of other administrative duties before that gets underway. So they have not actually selected members yet. And when they are selected, there will be a public notice issued that will announce to the public that members of the advisory committee are being selected and anyone can apply to that.
Okay, Abby, hopefully that takes care of your question. Basically, the FACA has the Federal Advisory Committee Act has a lot of hoops for us to jump through before we can move forward. If you have anything else, if you have any other questions, please send them in.
Yeah, I can answer any further questions as they come
right,
up.
if to the anything on open internet, we'll send to Lynn. Lynn, I'm just going to ask you to hang out for a minute.
Sure.
And hopefully I've addressed, I've tried to respond to everybody who has emailed questions, a thank you, or who emailed in on the roll call to at least let you know that we did receive your email. I'm not sure that I got to everyone, but we do know you're out there. As I said before, the webcast as well as the PowerPoints will go up on the FCC's Reboot site. Once you're up at the Reboot site, part of the FCC, you'll have to dig around a little bit, but they should be up in a few days. Thank you again, everyone, for participating and sending in the questions. Okay, we're just going to hang out another minute. Okay. So I think that I think that about wraps it up, and I want to say we're going to continue these ongoing webinars as part of our dialogue with our state and local governments. I've gotten a lot of emails saying this is great, and so all the hard work really goes to all the people who gave the presentations. We're just sort of organizing this, and we hope in the time of limited state budgets that this is really helping you guys out there. So thanks again, and feel free to email me, gregory.vatis@fcc.gov, or you can send it to livequestions@fcc.gov, and we'll certainly pass on your questions to the appropriate folks in the bureaus. Thank you again.